Hello, Namaskar, Vanakkam. My name is Sudhir Sahasranaman and you're watching CBSE with Sudhir. What we are going to do today is on popular demand because quite a few number of students were asking for this particular chapter. This is chapter number 10 of Science Curiosity textbook, Life Processes in Plants. So that's what we are going to do in this particular video. This is going to be the explanation in English. Subsequently, we will also do the same chapter explaining it in Hindi so that those students who are more comfortable understanding it in Hindi can refer to the Hindi playlist. So that's what we are going to do today. Class 7 Science, share and subscribe. These are two things which you definitely need to do, and also press the bell icon so that you get the notification whenever I post my next video. Now, before I start, I thought let's have it more practical oriented. Okay, so you would have these kind of plants in your house. This is the money plant, of course, a very beautiful, one of my favorite and a very beautiful looking plant. So what we are essentially going to study in this chapter today is how these beautiful young green leaves produce food, what is the entire process of photosynthesis, and what is the manner in which these leaves also undertake respiration. They also respire. How does that take place? And what's the difference between photosynthesis and respiration? Because many students tend to confuse. So what I've done is I found a few gaps in your NCERT textbooks. So wherever I think, because whenever I am looking at the chapter and reading the lines, I see that, okay, this why a student may have a why question out here. A student may have a how question out here. So I have tried to explain all those questions in more detail. So stay tuned till the end of the video for this chapter. It's going to be an extremely interesting chapter studying about the plant kingdom. Before I start, I want to actually throw a question at you. The question is, why should we not sleep under trees at night? You know, like this person is sleeping. Why is it that it is advised that you should ideally not sleep under a tree or inside a forest at night? I will tell you the answer at the end of the class. Okay, this is going to be, think about it. If you know about it, write it down and then match it with my answer at the end of the video. Don't fast forward the video right now. Uska answer last mein bataunga, because only when you understand everything, by that time even you will know the answer. Okay, let's now get to the NCERT textbook. Now in grade 6, we learned that all living beings grow and need food for their growth. Also in the previous chapter, that is to do with animals, the life processes in animals, we studied about the digestive system. We studied about the respiratory system. I hope you have seen those videos, which you have done both in Hindi and English. Now, we know that the animals obviously eat food in order to grow. But what about plants? Is the role of the plant only to provide us with food, or do they also do something more than just that? Have you ever seen plants eating food like we do, like animals do, right? You have breakfast, lunch and dinner and snacks in between, right? Do you see the plant also eating some kind of a snack? What is the process by which these plants are able to, the new young leaves come out of that? Obviously, that means there is some kind of growth pattern taking place inside the plant. Isn't that true? So just as animals grow, we also see that the plant growing. A mango sapling that is planted, let's say now, in another 5, 10, 15, 20 years, it will become a big tree, which means there is a growth process happening inside that plant. What we are going to study is this very fascinating manner in which the plants also grow. So I feel very interested in this chapter from botany. I hope you also feel equally interested. So the chapter is basically throwing a lot of questions right at the beginning. We learned that the food provides nutrients like carbohydrates, fats, proteins, vitamins, minerals, the 5 things that I told you about in the previous chapter, along with water. All these are essential for growth. So let's explore how plants obtain nutrients for their growth. What I want to show you is the first graph. Now you see certain elements in this particular photograph, in this particular illustration. One, this is the soil. Okay, this entire thing is the soil. Okay, then you have the entire root system. Then you have the upper part, what we see normally, we obviously don't see all these roots unless you uproot the plant. We see the leaves, we see the stems, in some cases the flowers, the fruits, etc. Then you have the sun factor. Okay, so the factors, what is missing in this is the fact that you also put water into the soil, which is taken by these roots, and that provides the growth, helps the growth process of the plant. So the 5 things that are required: the soil, the roots, water, the plant above, and the sunlight. These are important factors for the growth of a plant. Please remember this. Please note this down in your notebook so that you can refer to it again. And this is really at the heart of this particular chapter. So let's go ahead. You can see this lovely looking tree. So how do plants grow? It says, look around your neighborhood. Have you observed any changes in a plant during its lifespan? As a plant grows, there are new leaves, there are new branches, twigs, fruits, flowers, etc. Right? The height of the plant increases. So one boy is saying that when we water plants, they grow better. So he's attributing it to water, that water is the main reason that a plant grows. The girl says that maybe they take food from the soil through their roots. The girl says the sunlight plays a role in their thing. So what about all I told you? So he's talking about water, she's talking about soil and the roots, she's talking about sunlight, and he's saying maybe there is something else which plays a role in the growth of a plant. So let's perform an experiment. Let's have 3 pots like what I showed you out here. Like for example, a little heavy. So if I showed you this kind of a plant is what you're saying, A, B, C. Let's imagine 3 plants like this and label them A, B, and C. A, what we are doing is that we are providing it with water, as you can see in the jug here, right? And we are also putting it in direct sunlight. Okay, so this is getting, A is getting both sunlight and water. B is getting sunlight, but it is not getting water. C is getting water, but it is kept in the dark. It is not exposed to sunlight. What will happen is the experiment. It will take some time. It's not something like this will happen tomorrow. Let's give it about 2 to 3 days kind of time. And you will find, and this can be money plant, it could be a chili plant. Tomato and chilies are mentioned because they grow very fast. Okay, money plants, they may take a little more time, but chilies and chili as in mirchi and tomato, they grow very fast. So what you do is to observe. Okay, what you do is to observe, and you will find that the pot A, which is exposed to sunlight as well as it is provided with water, will actually grow the best compared to pot B and C. B will not grow because it's not getting water. C will not grow sufficiently because it is not getting sunlight. So A, which gets both sunlight as well as water, will grow the best. So what do you infer? What is the conclusion that you arrive at? So this experiment will need 2 weeks is what they said, which is absolutely ideal. So what is the conclusion? That a plant needs both sunlight and water. Only one will not work. If you expose it only to sunlight and not give it water, sorry, it won't work. If you give it only water but keep it in a dark, shady place, sorry, it won't work. It needs sunlight also. So there is a fascinating fact which has been taken from an ancient Indian text called Vriksha Ayurveda. That is Ayurveda that depends on the plant kingdom. It says that it's based on practical experiences and patterns seen over time. And these have been kind of, documented with talking about manure preparation, mixing water, barley, various seeds like green, black, horse grams, etc. So various kind of experiments have been done. So basically it says that trees do not produce fruits and flowers merely because they are planted, which means that just by planting won't work. You need to give it water. You need to provide sunlight. You need to provide the right kind of conditions for the plant to grow. That's important. Just like giving birth to a baby is not enough. The baby has to be provided food. It has to be given love and affection. Only then the baby will grow. And even the food that is provided to the baby, it has to be healthy food, which has all the different nutrients which it needs for its growth. Now, how do plants get food for their growth? Now, we know that we feel hungry, we go to the kitchen and eat something, right? Or our parents give it to us at the dining table. Animals, the cow will go and eat grass. The lion will hunt for its prey, the deer or a zebra, etc. It will attack, and it will be because it's a carnivorous animal. It's not a herbivorous. Herbivorous are those who eat grass, and plants. Carnivorous are those who kill other animals and eat. Now, plants don't do anything because plants are rooted. They can't move from place A to place B. Can the plant say, the plant which is there in my balcony, can it say that, sir, I want food for to eat, so can I also come to the kitchen and eat? No, it cannot, right? So how does the plant deal with this kind of a practical problem where it cannot transport itself from place A to place B? That's why it has leaves. The leaves are the food factory of the plant. So the food, the kitchen of the plant is the leaf. That's where the food is prepared. So one word, of course, would be the food factory. You can also call it, to understand it better, the kitchen area of the plant. Now, what happens is that the plants store food in the form of starch, which we have studied before. It is a form of carbohydrate. This starch, how does the starch get produced? This starch is produced in the leaves of the plant, which by design, the leaves generally, you see most of the leaves are generally very broad. There's a lot of surface area. So in that large surface area of the plant's leaves is where the food, the starch, is produced, and they are mostly green. The leaves mostly are green because of the presence of a green pigment, and this is an extremely important fact that you need to remember for the rest of your life. That is called chlorophyll. Chlorophyll, which helps, and because the leaf is broad, it helps to absorb and capture the sunlight efficiently. Otherwise, if the leaf was this much, the surface area won't be much, no, for the sunlight. But if the leaf is broad, the sunlight is able to come and hit a larger part of the leaf. And it has a green pigment called chlorophyll. What does it do? Okay, what is the role that chlorophyll plays? Let's go through an experiment first. What you do is to keep a leaf in boiling water for about 5 minutes. Okay, in order to soften it. When you keep it in boiling water, it kind of gets softened. Then you dip this particular leaf in a test tube which contains alcohol. Then place the test tube in a beaker containing boiling water and wait until the leaf becomes completely colorless. I'm going through the entire step-by-step process that you need to do. So what you're seeing out here, this is boiling water because you are putting in a flame out here, and you have put this leaf here which has been earlier dipped in alcohol. Okay. Now, subsequently, then you take out the leaf and place it on a plate, and then you put some drops of diluted iodine solution with the help of a dropper on the leaf, which is now decolorized. The green color is now decolorized. Okay. Then you wait for a few minutes. What you see, whether the leaf turns into blue-black. If it turns into bluish black color, like the color of my shirt, it means that it has the presence of starch. Okay, this is a caution that you need to exercise. So always do this in the presence of a teacher or a lab assistant. Now, the decolorization, why is it done? Because it will enable us to see the color change. Otherwise, in the green color, if you change it, the blue color will not be very visible, which is why you're decolorizing it. Means you're reducing the green color from the leaf. Now, we have learned, so if it turns into a blue-black color, it means it has starch. Now, water and sunlight are important. We've already learned that. Now, in activity 10.2, what have we learned? That green leaves store starch as food. So this is the second experiment with which we have learned. Now, Bhaskar loves gardening during his free time, and he looks around his garden and wonders how plants produce food. And from his experience, Bhaskar knows that water and sunlight are essential. He knows that. Okay. So he says that sunlight, does it contribute to, how does the sunlight contribute to the production of the food is something which he is not able to understand very clearly. Okay. So how does do that? So let's understand. So what does he do? What he does is to perform an experiment. he takes a leaf which has both green. Oh, I wish I had got that plant. It has both green and light green patches. Okay, green and one thing which is not very green. You would have seen some plants which have green patches, and in between there would be white color or cream color patches. Okay, he puts one in sunlight and the other in the darkness for 36 hours. Okay, this is the experiment that he's doing, and he wants to do the starch test on them. So what he did was he made a sketch of the areas which are green and which are the areas which are not green. Okay, so that later on when he does the iodine test, he can actually see which areas have produced starch and which areas have not produced starch. Okay, so what he does, so you see this thing, this is the leaf. Like you will see some plants. I'm sure if you go into a garden, you will be able to see such plants which will not be uniform. Like this money plant is uniformly green, largely uniformly green. But there will be some more plants. There are some leaves which have some patches of white. For example, if you see this leaf, this particular leaf, it has some patches which are more cream color. But if a leaf like this, you are seeing it is completely green in color. So there would be some kind of patches. So what you see is that when you do the iodine test, okay, the green patches are turning completely blue and black, you see, whereas the light patches which are not green are not changing in color at all. Okay, so that is the plant kept in the green. The dark is different. This is the first one, is the plant kept in sunlight. The plant which is kept in the dark, which has not received sunlight, there will be no change in color at all, which means no starch has been produced. Whereas the plant which has been kept in sunlight, and we are assuming that both of them will be given water, that has managed to produce starch, which is food, which is a carbohydrate. So Bhaskar recorded a blue-black color indicating the presence of starch on the green patches of the leaf obtained from the plant which has been placed outside in the sunlight, dhoop mein. But the plant kept in the dark does not show a blue-black color even on the green patches, indicating that no starch has been produced. Important, I hope you have understood. Now, the non-green patches of the leaf obtained from the plant placed in sunlight, they do not turn blue-black, which means there is no chlorophyll in those non-green patches. Okay, because that green pigment called chlorophyll is not there in the non-green patches, they do not have sufficient chlorophyll, so they also have not been able to produce starch. So starch is produced by the presence of chlorophyll, by the presence of sunlight, and by the availability of water. Understood or not? Water, sunlight, chlorophyll. These three elements are important. Now, there is an interesting fact that there are some plants whose leaves actually appear red, violet, or brown. Have you seen a plant like this? I've got it for you. Now you see this particular plant from my garden. Now you see this one has part of it which are non-green in color. The middle portion is green in color, but the outer part of the leaf, the outer periphery of the leaf, you see the periphery of the leaf is all red or maroonish red in color. Okay, so how is that? How is it that it is like that? So that's because these leaves contain more of these colored pigment than the green color chlorophyll. So while chlorophyll is there in the center of the leaf, the periphery of the leaf, the outer area, boundary of the leaf is not containing chlorophyll. It is having these colored pigments, because of which the color is reddish in color. So these pigments, they hide the green color. So some of these pigments also help in photosynthesis, and you can use, so if I do an iodine test, I'll be able to find out whether starch is being produced in the boundary of the leaf also, or is it being produced only in the center of the leaf. Okay, isn't it fascinating? Great. There would be leaves. In fact, I remember we used to have a plant like this whose entire leaves would be brown in color, reddish brown in color, but it does not mean it only means that the red pigment is hiding the chlorophyll, the green pigment, but it does not mean that photosynthesis is not taking place. Photosynthesis may still be taking place, like it must be taking place in this particular plant as well. So what do we infer? So we have done about 2-3 different experiments. So leaves are mostly green because of the presence of chlorophyll, that is fact number one. Okay. We've also seen that the starch is produced where green patches of the leaf are present. Fact number two. We can infer that chlorophyll obviously then helps in preparing starch in the presence of sunlight and water. So therefore, the leaves are called the food factories, or as I said, the kitchen area of the plants. Now, I'm going to do a quick revision with the help of my notes so that, anyone, anytime asks you this in the classroom, you should be the CBSE with Sudhir student should be able to stand up and explain to the entire class and even the teacher with the help of examples that I'm giving. So let's go ahead. Why are leaves called the food factories of plants? Because photosynthesis happens in leaves, about which we are going to study a little later. Leaves contain a green pigment. I'm just repeating it so that you understand how the answer is to be written. If you get a 3 marks question, this is the way you write your answer. To take a screenshot so that you can take it down in the notes later also. But do that immediately after the class. So photosynthesis happens in leaves. Leaves contain a green pigment called chlorophyll. It helps absorb sunlight, which is essential for photosynthesis. Leaves take in the raw materials. The raw materials include carbon dioxide, about which we'll study in a little while. Carbon dioxide from the air enters through the small pores in the leaves called stomata, about which we will study. Water comes from the roots and reaches the leaves through xylem, about which we will study. Sunlight is absorbed by chlorophyll. So, I'm giving you the entire picture. I could have done this later also, or should we do it later? What do you say? After we study the entire thing, should we do it later? I think that would be a better idea. We will do it at the end so that it helps in revision. I think that would be a better idea, because right now, if I'm talking about xylem and stomata, you will get confused. Let me go back to it. Okay. What is the role of air in the preparation of food? We have seen the role of sunlight. We have seen the role of chlorophyll. We also seen the role of water, because that is absorbed through the roots. What is the role of air? The role of air meaning oxygen. Do you know something? That if you have to have fire, oxygen is very important. Whereas if you have more of carbon dioxide, your fire will not light up. Which is why in fire extinguishers, you mix in carbon dioxide so that it can put off the fire. Whereas if you get oxygen, आग लग रही है, हवा चल रही है, आग बुझेगी नहीं, आग और जलेगी. Okay, if you have the other elements in it as well. If you have wood or some kind of combustible material. Now all these terms would be familiar to you. Now, while reading the contributions of scientists in plant nutrition, my sister told me that air plays a role in the process of food preparation in plants. So which gas? Let's do an experiment again. Lots of experiments in this one, which is why I'm doing more from the text. The teacher has to demonstrate this activity. What you do is you take a green plant like this one. You take a plant. Okay. Now, what you do is to keep it in the dark for about 2 to 3 days. Okay. Basically, what will happen is that when it does not get any sunlight, all the starch will get de-starched, which means all the starch will get removed from the leaves of the plants. Great. Step number 1. Now, what you do is to take one leaf which has been de-starched from this plant, pluck it, remove it. What you do is to take a bottle, okay, with a wide mouth. You put some caustic soda, which is a liquid which comes. You put some caustic soda whose chemical name is sodium hydroxide, okay, into it, because caustic soda, what does it do is to absorb carbon dioxide from the air. Now, this is the role played by caustic soda, sodium hydroxide. Now, it's a strong chemical. It can also cause burn, so you need to be very careful. What you do is to insert like this. That is, half the leaf portion of the leaf will be outside the bottle. Half the portion of the leaf towards the tip will be inside the bottle, where it will get exposed to caustic soda. Great. Understood? Now, you put it and you leave it for some time. Now, you place it in sunlight. So the leaf is getting sunlight. Okay. Now you observe it after a while. What happens is that the part of the leaf which was outside the bottle, there is a tip which is inside the bottle, but the portion of the leaf which is outside the bottle, it turns blue-black, indicating that it has the presence of starch, because now you are doing the iodine test on it. Okay, you do the iodine test on it. Okay, but the part of the leaf which was inside the bottle and getting exposed to caustic soda, that does not turn blue-black. It remains the same, which means that food has not been prepared in that part of the leaf. What is the reason? And you need to know this reason, because the caustic soda solution inside the flask has absorbed the carbon dioxide which is present in the air, and this shows that carbon dioxide is important for the production of food by a leaf. Understood or not? So now we have the fourth element: sunlight, water, chlorophyll, carbon dioxide. Understood? Please keep noting it. Okay. So this experiment shows that carbon dioxide present in the air is essential for plants to produce food, which is starch. Now, based on all this, what have you concluded? What I just now told you: sunlight, water, chlorophyll, carbon dioxide. Okay. So you can remember this as C2SW. Carbon dioxide and chlorophyll, C plus C, sunlight and water. You can remember this by this kind of a code. Now, the process by which plants prepare food. Now, the definition of photosynthesis. The process by which plants prepare food in the presence of sunlight and chlorophyll is called photosynthesis. And these four elements are absolutely necessary. Otherwise, photosynthesis will not take place. Synthesis itself means to synthesize, to come together. So all these four elements have to come together in order to produce starch. A leaf is the primary site for photosynthesis. There are other parts of the plant also which do photosynthesis, but mainly it is done by the leaf. The other parts of the plants like stem, etc., if they have sufficient amount of chlorophyll, even they can perform photosynthesis and produce food. So far we have learned that plants take in carbon dioxide from the air and water and use sunlight to prepare their food by the process of photosynthesis. I hope everything is clear till here. If yes, say yes, all clear. Okay. Now, have you ever thought about what more happens during this process? Do plants only take in substance from their surroundings, or they do also release something? You take in carbon dioxide, great, fine, good, very good, first class, wonderful, fantastic. Kuch dete bhi ho kya वापस? That's also important. Let's now do another experiment. Now what you do is to take this kind of an instrument. You identify it as A and B. What you need to do is to, the first one is kept in sunlight, the second one is kept in darkness. So what you do is to have an inverted test tube. You have put a plant out here, any kind of water plant. Okay, you put an inverted funnel and then you put a test tube, inverted test tube on top of it. Then you are putting the entire thing in beaker, right? You're putting the entire thing in beaker in which there is water. Okay, so yeah. So what you do is that you observe that the top portion out here, you would see some air bubbles. The air bubbles which are there, which means there is some gas which is being produced by the plant when it is exposed to sunlight. When it is exposed to sunlight, it is producing some gas, and you can see it because from the funnel, from here, it is going through here, this portion, and it is getting leaked, and in this portion, you will see some air bubbles being formed. So basically, but how do you know which gas it is? It could be ammonia, it could be methane, it could be carbon dioxide. Again, we don't know what gas it is. So how do you detect which gas it is? So you take a matchstick, you release it and you take a matchstick immediately and try to light it. If it catches fire, it means it is oxygen which has actually been produced, because oxygen is the one which actually helps in fire. So it indicates that oxygen is released in the process of photosynthesis. It also indicates that photosynthesis occurs in the presence of sunlight, because in the plant which has been kept inside in the dark, no such air bubbles would be formed. So oxygen is released during photosynthesis. Now that's another thing which we have now learned. So photosynthesis, if you have to just do a quick revision, you get the light energy through the sun, right? Here you have water and minerals because you will put water out here. Okay, you will all put water out here. So water will seep in through the soil. So the roots will get water, right? Then you are getting the carbon dioxide. You also already have the chlorophyll inside the leaf. Okay, you are then producing oxygen. You're also producing carbohydrate, that is starch, which eventually becomes glucose. So this is what happens in photosynthesis in a nutshell. I hope you are completely understood. Okay, I'm 100% sure none of my students will ever have a doubt in this, because I've explained it very slowly and with a lot of clarity. I'm pretty happy with that. Okay, so during photosynthesis, food is formed in the form of glucose, which is a simple carbohydrate. This glucose not only serves as an instant source of energy, but also gets converted into starch for storage. Sorry, glucose into starch. And that's what we are testing through iodine. Okay, so the chemical formula for this is carbon dioxide plus water in the presence of sunlight, in the presence of chlorophyll, gets converted into glucose, which then further gets converted into starch for storage and releases oxygen. This formula none of my students should ever forget. Kabhi bhi nahi bhulna. Okay, you have to remember this. It is completely important that you know carbon dioxide plus water in the presence of sunlight, in the presence of chlorophyll, gets converted into glucose and releases oxygen. Okay, now let's read about this scientist now. Rustam Hormozji Dastur, he studied the entire process of photosynthesis at the Royal Institute of Science, which is in Mumbai. Okay, now the Institute of Science. He studied the effects of amount of water and temperature on photosynthesis. He examined the importance of water, temperature, and the color of light in the process of photosynthesis. Now we come to how do leaves actually exchange gases during photosynthesis. You're saying carbon dioxide is coming and you're releasing oxygen. Is it so simple? It's not like, okay, you give me your biology science book, I will give you my maths textbook. It's not like that. Huh? So we know that photosynthesis needs carbon dioxide and oxygen is released in the process. Which part of the plant helps in the exchange of carbon dioxide and oxygen? Let's do an activity for that. So what you are doing is to take a leaf like this, and this part you remember, and I'm surprised this has not been explained, but I'm going to explain. Don't worry when Sudhir sir is there. Carefully peel a thin layer from the lower surface of the leaf. Now you may ask, why are they saying lower surface? That's the question. That's why when I myself read it, I read it like a student myself. So I keep asking this question. This has not been explained out here. I will explain to you. Don't worry. Why is it said from the lower surface of the leaf and not from the upper surface? And then you put it under a microscope. What you see is there will be many such openings out here. Okay, in the lower surface of the leaf. Okay. These are called stomata. In detail, we will study later in classes. In class 10, we will study. So these pores are called stomata. And stomata present on the surface of leaves, mainly lower. There are some plants where it is there on the upper surface also, like lotus. They help in the exchange of gases. They help in the exchange of gases. Now, let me tell it to you in detail. We will come back to this food factories thing in a bit. Why is the thin layer peeled from the lower surface of the leaf? Now you're seeing in this illustration, you're seeing all this stomata. Because the lower surface contains more stomata, which is tiny openings, and these stomata allow carbon dioxide to enter and oxygen to exit, to go out. Even though it gets less sunlight, because the lower surface will obviously get less sunlight compared to the upper surface. Obvious, now upper surface is exposed to sunlight, lower surface will get lesser amount of sunlight. Like the top floor will get more sunlight, the ground floor will get lesser sunlight. So the gas exchange takes place through the lower surface, which is why they said peel the lower surface, because there you will have these stomata. Okay. In most plants, especially the land plants, like these plants which I've got here, the lower surface has more stomata. Like this money plant, the lower surface will have more stomata. The upper surface will not have that many stomata. It will have, but very few. This helps reduce water loss because the lower surface is cooler and more shaded. It's not exposed so much to sunlight, so the plant will not lose water. The water that it is getting through the roots, so the water will be stored. It will not lose so much of water. Okay. The upper surface also may have some stomata, especially in plants which live in very wet conditions, in very humid conditions, like Sundarbans Delta in Bengal, right? They're called hydrophytes, which are there in more wet conditions with more water availability. In some aquatic plants which are completely in water, like lotus plant, the stomata is there only on the upper surface because the lower surface is underwater, so the exchange of gases cannot take place. Isn't it interesting? I've given you some extra information. Why? Because all this will be useful when you go for the science Olympiad examination. And I find it very exciting when my child, when my student knows something more than a student who is not seeing the CBSE with Sudhir videos. Isn't it very fascinating? So you should know science is all about curiosity. Science is all about knowing more, asking more questions, wanting to know more, demanding answers, asking the why and the how. That's very important. Keep that curiosity in you alive, because if the curiosity is dead, then कोई subject पढ़ने में मजा नहीं. There is no fun, you know. और subject पढ़ के लिए प्रयोजन में नहीं, right? So that's what you need to understand. Okay, अर्थमाइंदा. So अर्थमाइंदा राजा. So this is what, as far as the lower leaf, lower surface and the stomata is concerned. Now, let's understand about how transportation happens within plants. I mean, you go by car, you take a bus, you board a bus, or you travel by train or aircraft or cycle, whatever. Transportation also must be taking place inside the plant. How does that happen? And we are now first talking about transportation of water and minerals. Then we will talk about transportation of food. Now, all living beings obviously need water to grow. Plants, all this we have studied. Okay. Now, how does the water transport take place? For this activity, we require 2 glass tumblers, some water, red ink, and twigs, yani ki tahini, of 2 similar tender plants like this money plant with white color. Oh, this will not have flowers. So you need to take something which gets some flowers also. You can take the white sadabahar, which grows quite often in a garden, or balsam. Okay. Now, what is the experiment that you need to do? You have 2 glasses. In the second glass, you put the red ink with a dropper. Okay. You put the red ink. This is the ink pot which you used to have. You used to use an ink pot called Chelpak. Ask your parents whether they have used this ink pot ever. Chelpak used to be a popular ink. In fact, I still have it. I kept it for memory. You know, when we used to use fountain pens. Lovely period. All our school, we never used ball pens. Ball pens actually lead to bad handwriting. Fountain pens always have, lead to good handwriting. Now take 2 tumblers and label them A and B. Okay. Fill 1/3 of the tumbler. Then you put red ink into tumbler B. And then you cut obliquely, means at an angle, you cut the twig, okay, of the plant, which has these white flowers also. You can see those white flowers out here, right? And you place 1 plant in each tumbler. Okay. What do you notice? Observe the plants the next day. The next day, you're seeing that the water in tumbler B is red in color. Now, what happens is that as a result of the red ink which has been poured into, which has been mixed in the plant, for the first time in my life, I'm actually fasting today. I've never done that. I read somewhere that you should fast for 36 hours. So after dinner yesterday, I haven't eaten anything except water. And some doctor had said you can have coffee without sugar, or water, or some lemon juice without sugar, of course. I didn't have lemon juice. I had some buttermilk with some salt because of salt intake. I'm now feeling dizzy. I'm now feeling, chakkar aa raha hai. Anyway, so do you observe red color in your, because it helps remove the toxins from your system is what I was told. So I want to try this experiment. So I will eat tomorrow morning. Okay. Now, a red color is visible in the stem. So you see the stem of the plant is actually turning red in color in tumbler B. Tumbler A is the same. It remains green. Okay. The flowers have also turned a shade of red in tumbler B, which means the water is getting transported through the stem to the flowers, okay, and the entire stem. So now you cut the stem like this, you cut the stem and you observe it, okay. So what happens is that in this particular thing, you will know that the water from the roots, the blue lines that you can see, I hope you can see this clearly in on the screen, otherwise in your book you can see, the blue lines is what is transporting the water, and that gets transported through the xylem. It's called the xylem. Whereas the food which will be produced by the leaves gets transported, that is shown by the red arrow marks, that gets transported through the phloem. These two spellings you need to remember, and that's how the transport of water and minerals and food takes place inside a plant. So water and minerals are transported to the leaves and other parts of the plants through the xylem, and the water is used to perform various functions, because water, as we have learned so far, is also important in the overall process of photosynthesis. Now we will learn how the transport of food takes place. So food is transported through these tube-like structures called the phloem, okay, and they may also be stored in some other parts of the plant, such as seeds and roots. For example, a plant may have seeds, like many fruit bearing plants have seeds, so food may be stored there. Some plants, like for example groundnuts, etc., the food will be stored even in the seeds, in the roots, okay. So food can be stored in various parts, but it's all transported through tube-like structures, which are called, yes, the phloem, okay. The final part we come to, I will do a revision with the help of my notes after this quickly, which will really be helpful because it will give you very important details. Last part is, do plants respire? And the question and answers we'll do in a separate video, okay. Do plants respire? Respire means the entire process of breathing. We have learned about photosynthesis. Do they also respire? Yes, they do. So it's a simple experiment. Take some moong dal, okay, the seeds out here in a flask like this. And what you do is to have two test tubes, one with lime, both of them having lime water, but this one is connected to this particular tube, okay. These are germinating seeds, which means they can breathe, okay. So you cover the mouth of the conical flask, you fit the two test tubes, and you leave it undisturbed for a day. And you fill the two test tubes with lime water, okay. And only one of them is connected to this. The second one is not connected. So what you do now is that, see whether the lime water turns milky in the test tubes. Well, what happens is that the lime water turns milky in the first test tube because of the presence of more carbon dioxide inside the flask, which means that when they are breathing, they are releasing carbon dioxide. Please remember, during photosynthesis, they are releasing oxygen. But when plants breathe, that is their process of respiration, they are releasing carbon dioxide, okay. Where does the carbon dioxide come from? Because carbon dioxide is obviously present in air, and also it would be there in by the seeds that when they respire. So during respiration, which is a little different from photosynthesis, and I will explain this with the help of my notes, also with the help of my slides, that during respiration, glucose is broken down in the presence of oxygen, releasing carbon dioxide, water, and energy, the energy that you need for your body. So glucose plus oxygen releases carbon dioxide plus water plus energy. So the energy produced during respiration is used by the plants for their growth and development. And all parts of a plant, whether they are green or non-green, they all carry out respiration, okay. So this is as far as respiration is concerned. You will understand this even more clearly. Now let me go back to the food factory part. Photosynthesis takes place. This is how you need to write your answer, which is why I said take the screenshot. The leaves contain a green pigment, chlorophyll. We have said that they help absorb sunlight, which is needed for photosynthesis. We know that. Leaves take in the raw material. What are the raw material? Carbon dioxide from the air through tiny pores called stomata. All this we know now. Water comes from the roots and enters and gets transported to different parts through what? Through the xylem. And sunlight is absorbed by chlorophyll. We know all this now. Great. Leaves, what they do? They produce food, which is in the form of glucose stored in the form of starch. And using sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide, the leaves make glucose. which is a food for the plant, and oxygen is released as a byproduct. Oxygen is released. So the photosynthesis formula is what? You need to know this formula. Carbon dioxide plus water plus sunlight releases glucose plus oxygen. Now, this food is used or stored. The plant uses the glucose for energy or growth. Extra food is stored in roots, the stems, the fruits, or the seeds. So leaves, therefore, are called the food factories of the plants because they use the sunlight, air, and water to make food through photosynthesis. Answer aisa likhna. Ipdi earnam answer so that you get full marks. Okay. Arthamainda Raja. Now, this we have already studied. Now, the difference between photosynthesis and respiration. I want you to have no doubt at all. Let's look at the illustration here. So the plant during sunlight, in the presence of plant sunlight in daytime, what it does is to do photosynthesis, which means it takes in carbon dioxide and releases oxygen. Great. But during the night, when it is also respiring, I'm not saying that it does not respire during the day, but during the day, photosynthesis is the big job that is being undertaken. During the night, when there is no sunlight, which means no photosynthesis will take place. Henna. So at that time, it uses oxygen to respire and leaves out carbon dioxide. By now, you must be getting a hint about the question that I asked right at the beginning, that why should you not sleep under trees at night? So photosynthesis and respiration, plants take in photosynthesis, plants take carbon dioxide from the air, they absorb water from the soil, they use sunlight and chlorophyll, which is there in the leaf, to convert carbon dioxide and water into glucose and oxygen. Oxygen is released into the air, and that oxygen is what we breathe. Understood? What happens during respiration? Plants use oxygen to break down glucose from photosynthesis, which has been produced as the result of photosynthesis. This releases energy for the plant to grow and to repair itself, and carbon dioxide and water are released as byproducts. Now you will ask me a question. What is the question you will ask? You will ask this question. This is the question you should ask your teacher, that if carbon dioxide is released by plants during respiration, where do we get the oxygen from? Okay, we get it during day, but nighttime we will not get any oxygen. So nighttime we will all be short of oxygen. Logical question. Iska answer suno. Yes, plants release carbon dioxide during respiration, just like we human beings do. We breathe in oxygen and we release carbon dioxide. But the big point is that the lovely plants we have around us, they release lot more oxygen during photosynthesis than they consume during respiration. They are more givers than takers. They release much more oxygen during photosynthesis, but they actually take in very little oxygen during respiration. So chalta hai, they can take it, no problem, sir. Please take the oxygen during night. So we get most of our oxygen in the atmosphere from photosynthesis, from green plants like this one, from grass, from trees. Also, very important, this is again something which I'm telling you, extra information. It's not there in your textbook, but you will study about this later in 10th class. Photoplankton. Please remember, note this down somewhere, because somewhere, some quiz you may take part in, some science quiz you may take part in, some Olympiad, they may ask you a question and then you will be able to score extra. These are tiny plants which are there inside the ocean. They actually do photosynthesis because of the sunlight which will stream through the ocean, and they produce over 50% of the Earth's oxygen. Okay, details you will learn about in class 10. During the day, plants take in carbon dioxide, release oxygen via photosynthesis. At night, they respire, they take in oxygen and they release some carbon dioxide, but this is a much smaller amount compared to the oxygen that they release during photosynthesis. So what is the message of this? That plants are oxygen givers much more than oxygen takers. They give much more, they do more charity than they actually take. So they give a lot and take a little during night. Now let me come to the question that why shouldn't we sleep under trees or in a forest area at night? Because during the day, trees do photosynthesis, they take in carbon dioxide and release oxygen. This is good for humans as we breathe that oxygen. But during the night, photosynthesis stops because there is no sunlight. Trees continue to respire, they take oxygen and release carbon dioxide. So in some areas, especially very dense forest, carbon dioxide can accumulate near the ground. If there is a dense, if there are lots of, if there is only one or two trees, no problem, sir. You can sleep. But if it's a dense area with lots of trees, then you will also be breathing in carbon dioxide, which is being released by the trees. You will not, because oxygen they are also taking, you're also taking. So then you'll have to share the oxygen with the trees, right? So there will be less amount of oxygen for your lungs. So you will also be sharing more of the carbon dioxide, which is being released by the trees. So therefore, you may feel a little uncomfortable or dizzy. And since trees are not giving much oxygen at night and they're using some of it for their own respiration, the oxygen level could drop in that area depending on how many trees are there. Okay, I hope you have got the answer to this question. Okay, great. Maza aaya. I enjoyed doing this video and I do hope you also enjoyed. Thank you very much for your time and patience. Subscribe to the channel, share the video. We will do the question and answers in a separate video. As I said, the Hindi one will also follow, but I do hope this chapter is absolutely clear. Tata, bye bye. Thank you very much. Till the next video, take care of yourself and be a good person.